That's correct. And that's the problem right now. Until this is cleared up and resolved and our ratings are reestablished, there is virtually no chance of any kind of borrowing, whether it's for a public safety complex or anything else that may come across our desks that has to be dealt with. And that's disturbing enough. But they speak to the same things that got us here, which had to do with the inadequacy of information and the late information coming to the auditors and the reasons the auditors left.
And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live, well, from an undisclosed location in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. I'd like to say terrible news was announced today, but and our guests will develop on that a little bit longer. Let's just say terrible news was disclosed today. And clearly, amongst the body politic, regular folks, bond ratings are not a common discussion. And there's a lot of mysteries and sometimes a little confusion about what they mean, the impact on them. So we're going to have a quick discussion with that tonight. Of course, we're here with Woonsocket City Council Chair John Ward. He is a candidate to be the mayor of Woonsocket. This is 3 or 4 times this week, City Council Chair. And each revelation gets a little bit more disturbing and a little bit more confusing. So if I get this right, a significant bond agency, the information was released today, and that's an important part here. The information was released today that they have decided not to, air quotes, cover the city of Woonsocket. I guess you can call this another chapter of John Ward explains it all to us. So explain it all to us.
Okay.
The ramifications sound terrible. Explain.
I'm chuckling not because it's funny, but because of what you just said. And basically what I learned this afternoon is Moody's withdraws Woonsocket's bond rating. They have not changed the bond rating, they simply have withdrawn it, so we have no bond rating from Moody's. And it is not dissimilar to what took place about a month ago with Coventry, because they had not provided their audit. And this one is about us not having provided our audit, the loss of our audit firm, the replacement of the audit firm, the fact that the audit is still not complete. So they have, in their minds, insufficient information to be able to support any kind of rating at all. And that's why they've withdrawn it. I think the thing that troubles me is that, the last time Moody's spoke about Woonsocket back in June or July, they spoke about us having a negative outlook. And so this is pretty much the follow-up to a negative outlook. The problem I have is it says that Woonsocket, in the article, which is in the Providence Business News, and I'm sure will be in other places soon, it says that Woonsocket publicly disclosed the Moody's rating withdrawal in an October 16 securities filing. And the disturbing thing is, every council person that I've spoken with so far had absolutely no knowledge of this occurrence on October 16th. And so, we hear about all these candidates, and myself, who speak of transparency. Well, the current mayor withholding this information from its city council since October the 16th, which is 12 days ago, 13 days ago, that's not acceptable, plain and simple. That's not transparency. That's not working with your council. We've had a council meeting since then. We've heard nothing about this until this newspaper article, and this is how the Woonsocket City Council has to learn about our bond rating being withdrawn, is through a newspaper article. I find that unacceptable, frankly.
And by the way, all credit to Providence Business News that does a fine job of focusing on the details. And to your point, this is, if you will, the circulatory system of the finances of any city of any size, is its ability to finance ongoing operations, often through a bond mechanism.
That's correct. And that's the problem right now. Until this is cleared up and resolved and our ratings are reestablished, there is virtually no chance of any kind of borrowing, whether it's for a public safety complex, or anything else that may come across our desks that has to be dealt with, and that's disturbing enough. But they speak to the same things that got us here, which had to do with the inadequacy of information and late information coming to the auditors and the reasons the auditors left. So it's a problem in that regard, in that we have to get this audit finished, and it's being worked on with Markham now doing the work and the assistance of another accounting firm to help the finance staff get the work done. So, but to me, that's only part of the issue. The real issue about this is the lack of transparency and the fact that this has been known by the mayor and the administration now since October 16th, and yet our own city council was not provided this information back on October 16th.
Is there, and again, not having worked with the bond agency directly, I can't imagine they just got up one morning and decided to do that. Is there the real possibility that there were also warnings put into place in the run-up to the eventual withdrawal?
There are. You don't have Moody's or Fitch or anyone taking action without lengthy conversations about the matters that would bring us to this point for at least a week or two in advance of this happening. And again, it's one of those situations where a good mayor would have said, we have a problem, called for a meeting with the council to discuss this, and then when the report is finally made public through this filing with the SEC or with the securities companies, they would have, a mayor should have then made a public announcement about it and come clean and let people know that this is happening. So basically we have a city council that's been kept in the dark again by another mayor about something that's not being done properly, or was done, is detrimental to the city's interest. And now we have to work on getting it fixed. And he mentions working on getting it fixed, but he's doing it while keeping the council completely in the dark about it.
Folks will point to the travesties behind the Baldelli hunt regime, of which the current mayor was an active participant. I don't think that anyone disputes that, as the land deal. But as you and I have discussed on several occasions, and has been the fodder for several city council meetings, it's the slow drip, the death by 1,000 paper cuts of the disclosures of incomplete tax deals, of Leobor hearings never heard, that are literally killing the city financially, isn't it?
Well, they're crippling us for certain. They're going to make it a very difficult struggle when we lose the ARPA funding that supported our budget this year for $1.4 million. That won't be available next year, in much the same way the state will be struggling with the same thing. And it's tax deals that have to be repaid or deferred off into future years, which is going to have an impact on residential property value, property taxes. And then the final challenge is we are undergoing right now a statistical revaluation. So not only do we have to manage the impact of all of the revenue streams, we have to manage how we structure our tax categories and rates to have the most balanced and stable impact on the taxpayers next year.
How important is bond financing? And this is an oversimplification of a challenging question, but in terms of, if you will, let me step back a second. Municipal finances are not filed and then checks simply drawn on. There's an ongoing revenue collection process, and there's an ongoing cost process. Think of it as not a smooth, serene lake, but a choppy, ocean-like series of waves and hitting a municipality that from a distance, from the taxpayer's perspective, looks just like a smooth inflow and outflow. In the absence of a bond rating, your ability or limited ability to finance, then you're, and again, please jump in and correct me, but you're ultimately then almost entirely dependent on cash flow, immediate cash flow, to finance a number of city operations, never mind if you're actually looking to invest in the community.
You're absolutely correct. It actually is something as simple as that when it comes to debt and trying to obtain debt when you need it to do things for projects that are ongoing, long-term projects. In terms of the day-to-day cash flow, the critical part of this becomes only if you need to go borrow money, principally. your interest rates on a bad rating will be higher, with a good rating will be lower. But more importantly, it becomes important to people who are running businesses that want to move into communities to see whether or not you speak of a stable or smooth or, a nice flow with not a lot of waves. Something like this I would call the equivalent of a rogue wave, which is going to topple ships over if they get caught in it. This is serious and it's big, but it's not uncorrectable, and it makes it very, very difficult to attract business, to attract employees when they don't think that the community is stable enough that they want to take the chances and invest in it, either through coming to work here or moving their business into the city or starting a business in the city. So we need to get this done, cleared up, get the audits done, and get Moody's back on the phone so we can talk about what we've done to structure good policies, good procedures, and finish these audits so that we can move on and reestablish ourselves as a quality place for people to come live, work, and invest for their business.
How many weeks, months, days are we talking about? This is not an overnight process. This isn't a phone call, oops, we forgot to send this form in.
No, I don't know exactly where they are with the audit, and if I did, I could give you a better handle on that. But I would be thinking that we're talking getting through the 24 audit, which will probably take until early spring or late winter before that's done. So we're looking at hopefully getting back in the game sometime late winter, early spring. I'm trying to be optimistic about it. I really don't have enough information to give a firm answer on that at this point. But as we collect more information about the status of our audit, I could give you a better answer.
Now, we talked the other day about a mailer, a rather scurrilous mailer that went out. And by the way, what's fascinating as an observer, as someone who doesn't live in Woonsocket but spends a lot of time here, is to have seen, I wouldn't even call it the visceral disgust, the outright disgust folks had for that mailer, based in part on your rather pointed explanation, but also based on just the exhaustion, if you will, that people have for the kind of sleazy backdoor politics that have taken place over, well, depending on your interpretation, big chunks out of the last 20 years.
Yes.
If you were cynical, put yourself in my shoes. I'm cynical. You probably picked up on that. I might posit the notion that would say, wow, this was discovered probably, I don't know, a month ago. There's an election coming up. The fact that this was disclosed this week in the run-up to the election as opposed to next Wednesday, your thoughts on the not-so-coincidental nature of the timing?
I would say, from a cynical perspective,
right,
yes, that's a fair assessment of possibilities. But actually, from a more pragmatic candidate perspective, I have to wonder if the fact that the mayor has routinely blamed the city council for the loss of our auditor and therefore the delay of the audit and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I'm wondering, and having heard from various parts of the city that there is yet another hit piece coming after me, trying to be reasonably a candidate with an expectation that might happen. I'm wondering if the next hit piece is to blame Council President John Ward for the withdrawal of Moody's rating. Somehow it's because the council was involved and our auditor's leaving, whether or not this is going to be the next piece of junk mail that comes into people's mailboxes, if there is one. If there is not one, great. But if there is one, I wonder if this is going to be the story being told. And frankly, it shouldn't be, because it has nothing to do with John Ward or the council. It has to do with the failings of the Baldelli Hunt administration and the inability of the new administration to pick it up and have enough knowledge to focus on resolving those issues.
I'd like to point out, or reference, if you will, some comments you made in our conversation the other day. The city charter is very specific, pointed, blunt about the literally charter rule that the city council cannot be
We cannot
involved in this.
We cannot interfere with the operation of any department of the city government.
Right.
And that would go to the point of my somehow injecting procedures into their workday or instructing them about what to do about certain things. I could not become the consultant to the city administration because I'm on the council, and it would be a violation of our city charter. So I don't do that, but whenever I could in the past provide assistance through my staff, as I mentioned in the last conversation we had, I did it. And I did it every chance I could. Like with my email to the mayor saying we're looking to install LED lights across 6 communities in the state. Would you like to join the bid process? And she did, and we have LED lights, and we're saving $300,000 a year. I can do that because it's just offering assistance or participation, but I cannot walk in and tell people how they should do their jobs.
And on the other hand, should you win election, in fact, I think right about now, about a week from now, we'll know who the next mayor of the city of Woonsocket will be.
Yes.
If in fact you were the mayor, and not only be given the opportunity, but be given the responsibility of working directly with the city finance department, managing actively the city finance department, acting as part of the city finance department if need be, is it fair to say that the decades of experience you have in municipal finance, and not only that, but perhaps even the contacts you would have within Fitch, Moody's, and the major banks and rating agencies might have prevented this type of brinksmanship?
I don't know that it could have prevented it, trying to pick up after what was left. But, it might have prevented the withdrawal, yes, because I think we could have corrected more quickly. I expect, should this campaign finish with my being elected, I will be going into hands-on assess the status of the work, the people, how they're proceeding, and working with the auditors and all of those people and having conversations. And then immediately, I expect, as an unusual practice, I may call for a meeting of not just the existing city council, but any of the people who win the election to participate in a meeting of a grand council, so to speak, of those.
A meeting of the whole.
The meeting of the whole, yes,
Right.
of those who are and those who will be, because this is the kind of matter that requires a frank discussion among all of the people who are going to be participating in solving the problem.
All hands on deck. I
Absolutely.
would even go so far as to use the term war footing, because really, in its financial sense, the city of Woonsocket's going to have to go to battle.
Crisis management,
Right.
but management most importantly.
Well, and ultimately, it seems like such a simple concept. What was it after the Watergate issue? Wasn't it said that the crimes were bad enough, but it's the cover-ups that
Yes.
ultimately bring you down? I don't know if the word cover-up.
That was the short version. Was it's not the crime, it's the cover-up.
Right.
And this is October 29th, and this was available and filed with securities companies on October 16th. And this council president and 6 other council members that I'm aware of, but possibly less, only became aware of it because Providence Business News had it in the paper.
Right. So this, I think it speaks for itself. Well, there have been so many self-inflicted wounds on the city because of mismanagement in the last 20 years, but arguably the last 4 or 5 years, all of this was so avoidable. And, as a local observer, witness, reporter of news, my little organization, we do a little bit of work with homeless in the community. And I see firsthand, as do you, the suffering that's taking place in a city like Woonsocket right now.
Well,
And
it's happening all across the country too, but it is happening here.
Right.
And it's a growing problem here.
right, and the money and the resources and the time. I mean, let's look at not just the money spent on the bad tax deals and the Leobor and now potentially this, but the inability, perhaps, under the current administration. And I imagine if you're elected, this will be alleviated. Yes, that's an editorial remark. Yes, but the focus or the inability to focus right now under this regime on growing the city and instead reacting to brinksmanship, disasters, self-inflicted financial gunshot wounds, for lack of a better term, to me is a disaster and screams lost opportunity.
Well, every time these things occur, they are lost opportunities because we're distracted and doing other things that are taking away from what we could be accomplishing.
Well, John Ward, how can folks find out about you and your campaign in the coming days? Again, just 1 week till Election Day.
Well, I have some work to do on the website. It's wardformayor.org, and it's there. And I have an email address, johnward@wardformayor.org. They can send me an email. They can ask questions, and I will be posting this kind of news up on that website probably between today and tomorrow. And I'll be on the local radio stations talking about it in the next couple of days.
And you'll be on the Coalition Radio Network in the next couple of hours.
Yes, and I am. I'm not showing it here, but earlier tonight when I discovered it, I was very upset that it happened. Most importantly, when I soon after learned that it was known about since October 16th, it was extremely disturbing and troubling to me, and makes me more determined than ever to get on with this election so I can get on with the job. I don't want to presume too much here, but it's time.
Right. Well, I think you and I have spoken many times over the last few years. When I say I love this city, I think you know it's heartfelt. And I love the people in it. I sense great opportunity once your team moves past this. And you will. And the city will survive. The city will succeed. The city will thrive because there are wonderful people in the city. And there's a connection between the people in the city that I rarely see. And I travel a lot, and I spend a lot of time dealing with issues like this. I don't know if I've seen a group of people more resilient than the people in Woonsocket. So when I tell you my heartfelt wishes and my best of lucks, and I mean it. And so
thank you.
Best of luck this week. And what do we say? It's time to get to work.
You stole a line right out of my speech.
There you go. John Ward,
Thank
he
you.
is your Woonsocket City Council President. He is running to be the mayor. We often joke amongst us who follow Woonsocket politics that John Ward was bioengineered, if you will, to be a mayor at this moment, at this time, at this place. And again, if that sounds like biased editorialization, it is. So folks need to deal with that. The exogenous events and the challenges that the city face right now are dire, but they will be resolved. And more so now than ever, elections have consequences.
Yes.
Good night.